We're so conscious of what we put into our bodies, but how conscious are we of what we feed our minds? Just because something is in front of us and there to consume doesn't mean that we should consume it, because it may stay with us a lot longer than the actual episode or conversation. Maybe, perhaps, it seeps into your nervous system and stays with you for days, months, even years afterwards. That's the topic for today's conversation. So let's dive into it. Welcome to Higher Self Mastery, the podcast for women ready to leave behind who they were told to be and remember who they truly are. I'm your host, Dharmi Schumacher. This is your space to come home to yourself, to honor the inner pull for more truth and more depth, and more meaning as you enter a new chapter of your life. Together, we're reframing midlife crisis into the midlife magic that it actually is, because this is your rebirth. Through soulful conversations and spiritual tools, you'll reconnect to your truth and reclaim your voice and live the life that your soul came here for. So let's begin. These days, I'm pretty conscious about what I consume in terms of what goes into my mind. But I am only human, and I do slip back into my old ways, sometimes out of habit, or sometimes because I get sucked into algorithms, or sometimes because, maybe gossip intrigues me and I steer off the path that I usually walk on. And this happened to me a couple of months ago, and it was a really good reminder of why it is so important to be mindful of what we feed our brains, what we feed our psyche and our minds, and just how it actually affects us. So, for the most part, I don't follow the news. And I haven't since COVID, because that's when, for me, it really reached the peak of fear mongering, right? And there was, yes, genuine reasons to be fearful as well. But I don't feel like it serves any purpose in any positive way or useful or helpful or nourishing way. So in 2020, I decided that I am signing out of the news. It wasn't something that I just did overnight. It was something that I never really bought into. And when I did, it was more out of I should consume the news. So it wasn't that difficult for me to drop off completely. And hand on my heart, I actually haven't really read the news since 2020, except for the odd occasion here or there when something has happened. Because my motto has always been, if it's big enough or important enough, then I will hear about it, because everybody else is consuming it. And so they will be talking about it. And that conversation, that information will come back and reach me in some way or another. And up until now, that hasn't failed me. I always do find out. And if I really then feel like I want to learn a little bit more or do a little bit more reading on that myself, then I go away and I'll look into it. And so it's not just with news though, but that has really helped to keep what goes into my psyche, what goes into my mind really quite clean, because for the most part, majority of us are indoctrinated into believing culturally that it is important and necessary to consume the news, whereas the news is actually completely biased and based on the model of fearmongery in order to sell news, right? Happy stories don't sell. It's the ones that are full of doom and gloom and dread and horror and murders and assaults and all of those things, right? The list is long. That's what sells. So that is the operating system of newspapers and news reports, and how they continue to grow and feed off you. And so it is a big, big part of what most people consume. And so I think that is a good place to start this conversation. Now, the reason this was brought to the forefront of my mind was actually not something that was in the news, but actually just a social media algorithm that was put in front of me. Now, I usually don't start my day with my phone in my hand. I check the weather because I'm a stickler for making sure I've got the right clothes for the weather that's due that day. And if you too live in the UK, you know how changeable it is. So I check the weather, and at some point in the morning, I'll like check my important messages and stuff like that. But I don't go on social media. I don't know what happened that day. For some reason, I went on YouTube. I feel like saying I was looking for music. Like one of my favorite handpan players I listen to and consume on YouTube. But I got distracted before I even got to his channel. That's the only thing I can think of why I might have been on YouTube that morning. And so anyway, the algorithms decided to put something in front of me, something really out of context, something that would normally not appear on my feed. Now, usually, and it could have been so many different reasons why I chose to click and watch this video that day. And I still don't know exactly why, but I think there was a conversation that was already in my mind leading up to it a few days before or a week before about this sort of topic from different places. And so when this particular documentary came up in my feed, I clicked on it. And I decided very stupidly to listen to it and watch it while I got ready in the morning. So this is like first thing in the morning, I'm like fixing my hair, doing my makeup, all of those kind of things. And I didn't think it was a good idea to listen to it. I just didn't think that was the problem. And I just allowed myself to get sucked in, and I started consuming it because it was there in front of me. And the premise of this documentary was not a very nice one. It was a real life story of a woman telling her account of how she grew up in Australia and how she had been groomed by her teacher, and how that then led to a relationship and how they then got married. And it was this whole power, control, dynamics, etc. And finally, as an adult, she'd managed to move away from this relationship, finally take it to court. He got convicted and all of those kind of things, but years, decades later. And so she's telling her story from how it all began and all of those kind of things. And I must have consumed about 20 minutes of like this 30-minute documentary before I kind of snapped. I think it was like really reaching the pinnacle of like where it was getting quite difficult for me to consume the information that was being shared. And also, I think I finished getting ready. So that was that pattern interrupt. Like I was no longer sitting there doing what I was doing. And I was about to stand up, and that pattern interrupt made me go, what? Why have I just listened to that? Why have I just watched that? What on earth possessed me to do that? Now, the why and the what, sure, is important, is interesting. And as I said, I think it was already in my mind. There was already a conversation of that similar topic previously in the week as well. So I think that's where it was at the forefront of my mind and at my attention. And so that's why I kind of went in there and looked and digged a little bit more. Ordinarily or otherwise, maybe I wouldn't have, and maybe I would have just, sort of scrolled on. But the point is, I could not get that story out of my head the whole day. I then went on to go to work, where I'm usually fully consumed by what's around me and present, I should say, by my environment and the situation that I'm in. But that particular day, I was not present at all. All that was going through my head on repeat was this story that I had consumed from this documentary, going round and round and round in my head. And then, of course, it wasn't just the story that I consumed, but then my imagination joined in. My imagination joined in thinking about scenarios from when I was a little girl, when I went to school, and how maybe there were some dubious relations between students that I knew and other teachers, or others, not other teachers, and some teachers maybe. Was there something more in it, or did something like that happen? And, my imagination started going away with me there. And then my imagination started getting away from me, thinking about my little girl and when she goes to school, and other vulnerable girls at school, and other girls where this is happening to them right now, in this moment, in this time, and just going everywhere. And it was just so fixated. And towards the end of the day, I was like, wowzers. Not only was I exhausted, not only did I feel so depleted because the internal dialogue was of such a low frequency of fear. And it was just stuck in that place of fear. I was like, wow. I haven't had that experience in such a long time, which is, yes, why it is, on the one hand, profoundly affecting me. But I would argue to say it profoundly affects each and every one of us. It's just how sensitive you are in your awareness to being able to recognize what is actually doing to you, what is actually doing to your nervous system. Hands down, 10, 15 years ago, I could have consumed that same material and just carried on about my day and not felt like it had really affected me in the way that it did this time. And yes, maybe I am more sensitive to it now because how my life has changed and evolved now that I have a daughter of my own because of my age, etc., etc., etc. And my sensitivity has grown through the work that I do as well. But I truly, truly believe that the damage that it causes still absolutely is taking place, irrespective of how sensitive we feel to it. And it was a real eye-opening moment and a check-in, like, why did you do that? Why did you allow that to happen, Dharmi? Why did you allow yourself to consume something that you knew was not nourishing, was not positive, was not feeding you or expanding you or helping you to grow or challenging you in the right ways? It was nothing helpful or good. It was just fear-mongery, pulling you down. Yes, fear of real life events. And this is where it's a fine line between not going through life with your blinkers on. I'm not saying that we should do that either, because we are a part of this society. We are a part of this world, and we have to live in amongst it, especially if you've got a family, right? So it isn't about that at all, but it's about being so conscious about what we feed our minds because of how it can affect you. And there's another example that I also want to share with you. And I think that was the last time something like this happened to me. And it was about 6 years ago now when I first began this work in this industry here. And I watched a movie, and the context of the movie was quite disturbing and harrowing. But I didn't think much of it. It is the type of movie that I would have easily consumed previously in my 20s or in my 30s even. And I didn't think much of it. I knew it was going to be a challenging movie, perhaps, to watch, but I sat down willingly to watch it. Interestingly, despite it disturbing me. This is where the sensitivity part and the lack of awareness in how things feel in my body back then prevented me from recognizing what was happening and stopping. So some of the most harrowing parts of that movie were not at the end, as you would expect. They were like in the middle, right? Or they were peaking maybe 3/4 of the way through or something, at which point I should have stopped, could have stopped. But because I didn't have that awareness of what it feels like in my body, I carried on and watched the whole movie. And it disturbed me so much and affected my nervous system so much. Not only could I not sleep, not only could I not get it out of my head, not only was I felt like I had been violated myself on some level. I then actually asked my girlfriend to do some Reiki on me. I was just like, I'm not right. I'm not right. I genuinely, I felt a level of trauma just from watching this movie. And it took for her to clear my energy for me to start to come back into my body, start to feel safe, to start to ground, for my nervous system to regulate and settle again. And it took months after that as well. And I really, really noticed it. But it surprised me. I was just like, wow, I didn't know that watching a movie could have that kind of effect on me. But it did. And I share this because most of us go through life without really mindfully choosing what we feed our minds, what we consume with our minds, with our attention, what energy we allow in. So it's not just movies, it's not just documentaries, it's social media, the algorithm. What is it pushing in front of you when you're scrolling on social media platforms, whether that's YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or Pinterest? It doesn't matter. What kind of conversations are you having in real life with your work colleagues, with your family, with your friends? What are you listening to on podcasts, on radio? It's the consumption of information. It's the consumption of what energy you're making yourself available to and exposing yourself to and allowing in, that I'm asking you to just be more mindful about, because it affects you so much more than you may realize. Or maybe like me, you slip up every so often and you do feel it and you do realize, but maybe you're caught out of a habit. Or maybe your partner likes to watch certain things or listen to certain things and you're sitting there next to them. And so you sort of like join in and you listen and you watch as well, maybe to have that connection. But actually, it doesn't feel good in your body. So I'm asking you here, I'm inviting you here to have that greater awareness about what you allow yourself to consume. Because it isn't the remnants, the effects of what you consume far outlive the time that it takes for you to consume it. A 5-minute conversation may stay in your mind. How many times has that happened to you? Where it stays with you for days and days and days, if not weeks or months later. How this, in the example I gave you, this 90-minute movie stayed with me for months. I can still close my eyes and still see key scenes of that movie in my mind. It doesn't have the same visceral effect on me like it did. But the fact that I can still remember it means it's still on some level, in a very small way, still affecting me. I shouldn't still have those images in my mind if they haven't left an imprint, but they have left an imprint. years later, that was like 6 years ago, a 20-minute podcast may stay with you for weeks. And where it becomes why it ends up staying with you even longer and longer and longer is because the more it goes round, the dialogue or the visual or the conversation or the idea or the concept, the more it goes round in your mind, what you're doing is you're making that groove, that memory deeper and stronger and stronger. It's like you're carving, you're chiseling out into wood, and you just keep going over and over and over the line. And the more you repeat it, the deeper that groove gets, the deeper that line gets. So the more you go over it again and again and again and again in your mind, the longer that memory is going to stay with you. The only way then to stop that is to release it, to cleanse it out of you, to process it, and to remove it and let it go. Like I did with the Reiki in that extreme case. It was so much for me. It's not something I could have handled on my own. I needed that external help and intervention. But with things like the documentary that I watched, I think it was easier to remove and cleanse from my being because the awareness dropped in a lot quicker. It was that day I was like, whoa, I didn't realize that was going to have such a profound effect on me. And then I, just did some practices and cleansed that and removed it from my aura. And so my invitation to you is please choose carefully what you consume, what you decide to feed your mind, because it very, very much will shape and determine the outcome of your reality, your life. Because remember, your feelings, your thoughts are all frequencies. And those frequencies you send out to the universe as a signal to say, this is what I want. The universe matches it like a magnet. So the things that you're consuming, the kind of conversations you're consuming, the information you're consuming, is that really what you want? Because if that's what you're consuming and then you're dwelling on it and you're thinking about it and it's going over and over in your mind, that is what you're telling the universe you want in your reality. So be really careful. And the positive side of this, and the good news, I should say, is that once you have this awareness and you realize just how it works, or maybe you already knew how it works, and this is just the reminder that you perhaps needed, because we all need reminders, don't we, to come back to practices, because we take things for granted, or we just slip into old habits, or we fall into what everybody else is doing, whatever the reason. The good news is, just as we can just as easily consume things that are going to work against us, we can just as easily consume things that are going to support us. So listening and consuming the right kind of music, the right kind of podcast, the right kind of conversations, the right kind of documentaries, the right kind of movies, things that are really filling and nourishing your soul, helping you to be the bigger, fuller, expanded version of yourself, helping you to feel more empowered, helping you to realize your full potential, helping you to see all of the magnificence that you are, helping you to see that you are worthy and deserving of everything that you desire, helping you to see and realize that if you have a dream, then it is yours for the taking, because no dreams are given to you without you fully being capable of achieving them. All of those things, all those nourishing things, and you can totally surround yourself your entire day from morning till night can be surrounded by that kind of fuel, by that kind of information too, if you so choose it. And then see how different your life starts to unfold and how things start to suddenly just happen for you, fall in your lap, doors open, opportunities arrive, manifestations become your reality. It's just a choice, but such an important choice. What you consume is who you become. What you consume determines the outcome of your life and your reality. And it's your choice what you choose to consume. So please do so carefully, mindfully. Thank you so much. I'll see you here again next week. Bye-bye. Before we finish today's episode, I just wanted to let my lovely local listeners know that I've created a brand new in-person offering called a Sacred Exhale. These are beautiful, reflective gatherings for women who are tired of carrying the stress and the heaviness of the week into their weekend and are craving a space to pause, breathe, reconnect, and reset in a more intentional way. Each session will be shaped around seasonal living, natural cycles, and lunar energies, weaving together a delicious fusion of practices such as meditation, breathwork, journaling, movement, intention setting, rituals, and soulful conversations. The gatherings are taking place at BWB, the Collective in Whetstone in Leicestershire, and I'll pop the booking link in the show notes if your soul is whispering, I need this. I would absolutely love to welcome you into this space. Thank you for joining me on this episode of High Self Mastery. If something landed, moved you, or sparked a shift, I'd love to hear from you. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and share this episode with a woman in your life that is also ready to rise. And if you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast, especially in these early days. It really helps others to find this work too. If you're craving deeper support and sisterhood, join my mailing list using the link below, where you'll be the first to receive free meditations, learn about up-and-coming retreats, and other ways that we can work together. Until next time, honor your truth and trust in the timing of your becoming.